You have found the portal into the Laughing Stoic Buddha universe. LSB podcast with Nick Bibeau.
You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think.
Acquire and arrive at is based on having never left. Yeah, just chilled out because.
Neva,
Yes.
welcome to the Laughing Stoic Buddha podcast.
Thank you, Nick. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me on.
Right on. So I'll start with this. I just started on Twitter 3 weeks ago, and on the first week, I don't know, I got good karma or something. I came across your account and totally fell in love with your content, reached out to you. You hit me right back pretty quickly. And I've been loving your tweets and connecting with you. We've had a few DMs together. Seems like we have somewhat parallel stories as far as having writing as a calling in our soul, and life and everything else sort of getting in the way, and a little later on coming back to it. So I'm very glad that I connected with you. I'm very glad that you decided to do this podcast with me today. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. I really like that right off the bat you said that, you felt that writing is a calling, because it's very hard to find where its place is in the world when you're interested in it. If you say like, okay, I want to be an engineer or a doctor, it's very, very clear what the utility of that is. Like, okay, you're a useful person, right? We need you in the world. But when you say that you're a writer, like people still there's no set image in people's heads about what a writer is. They're like, what's the use of that? So, and I don't blame them. Like there are really dodgy people out there who are, writers, quote unquote, but then, they don't give a good impression of the term. Or like, okay, what are you gonna do with what do you really want to be? Okay, you're a writer. Okay, what do you really want to be in the real world, right? So I really appreciated what you said about writing being a vocation, because it's much more than just like a living, or something productive to do. It affects all areas of life if you are a writer, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, how did it start for you? Like, you did say that this was a sort of calling. So since you were a kid, I assume you were all you got into writing pretty early.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. You're the first person ever to ask me on this podcast about that, so I get to tell this story. That's cool.
Yes.
I had sort of an unconventional childhood. We're not going to get
Okay.
into it, but I was schooled. I was raised in a cult, so I never got like real public formal education. And I learned to read and write actually very late. It took me a long time.
Okay.
But even though I was a very slow to learn to read and write, I loved books and I love stories. Like I was known as the super imaginative kid. I was always coming up with stories. Like anyone that would listen, like, hey, I had like all these. It's so funny. I haven't talked about this in a long time. I had all these series of ideas of like these superheroes, and then I would come up with, tens and hundreds of different episodes of this certain superhero and stuff like that. And I love to draw. When I was 11 years old, I really got into Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit,
Oh my
J.R.R.
gosh.
Yeah, and I started writing my own version of it. I think I called it like the Seven Swords or something like that. And I would I would draw these huge elaborate maps with hundreds of little trees to represent forests and lakes and mountains and stuff. And I would just hand write for days and
Yeah.
days and days. And so it was always in me very early on. If you asked 11, 12-year-old Nick, what are you going to be when you grow up? Oh, I'm going to be an author. Like, there's no question about
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it hit me very early on. But there was a lot of thinking about writing a thread or some sort of blog on this soon. There was a lot of resistance because I was a terrible speller.
Yeah.
At 16 years old, I got evaluated, and I had like a 3rd grade spelling level at
Oh,
16. And
wow.
yeah, and so I got tutors and got help and all that. And by the time I graduated high school, I was up to, standard. I was up to 12th grade. And then I loved it, and I had a little bit more confidence because I had put in the work. And when I went to college, I planned to be a teacher, to teach
Mm-hmm.
English, in high school. And then I met somebody, got married, had to get a real job,
Oh,
became an engineer.
that's exactly what I was talking about. I was
Something
like,
useful.
yeah, it's like you're a useful person in society.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And then it took till about 30, 31. I'm 33
Mhm.
now, where I just had this calling that kept saying, man, you gotta write, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna, you have this one life. And then
Mhm.
I write about this a little bit on Twitter and on my newsletter. The biggest inspiration was I wanted to leave something behind for my daughters.
Yeah.
I'm very inspired by Bruce Lee,
Mhm.
who passed away young. He wrote a
Yeah.
lot, and his daughter, Sharon Lee, talks about how even though she lost her father when she was young, his writing, she read it her entire life, and it was sort of like he was there with her, even
Yeah.
though he wasn't there physically. And that just always called to me. I'm like, okay, I got to do something similar.
Yeah.
And so that's my motivation to sit down every single day and put something on the page. Is I have an audience of 2, my 2 daughters.
Yes.
And as I share it with the world, I get more feedback, and people tell
Mhm.
me what works and what doesn't, and people tell me it's helped them and changed their lives, and they're sharing it with their kids and all that, which is just, it's been the coolest, creative project of my life. But we're not here to interview me. We're here to interview you.
Oh, damn. I thought
Not gonna let you off the hook.
I know, I'm like, turn this around. But anyway.
You're good. You have a podcast yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I co-host a podcast, the Talking
Okay.
Writing podcast.
Talking
Yeah,
Writing
for
Podcast. Check it
yeah,
out, you guys. Is it
yes.
on YouTube and all the
Yeah,
main?
it's not in YouTube, but all the
Okay.
main streaming, music streaming. Yeah.
Okay. Can you say it one more time?
Talking Writing
Talking Writing.
podcast. And so we interview authors, artists, multimedia, creative practitioners, and we have this main question at the end. Of course, we talk about their work, but we ask them at the end, like, and we can talk about it here. Like, what does it mean to be a creative lifer? Meaning, like, if money were no object, would you still be writing?
Mm,
And the answer is yes, for everyone, obviously, like who writes or who practices art. And we ask why, like, why do you think you're a creative lifer? Like, what is the use of art, basically?
very
So
nice
yeah, so
question.
you get really interesting perspectives out of that.
I bet it reminds me of one of my favorite tweets. I've looked all over your profile. You have a
Wow.
tweet. You have a tweet which says, "I could read and write every day for the rest of my life, and that would be a good life."
That would be. I was surprised that that tweet really like blew up because
Yeah,
I
I'm
was
not.
I just like wrote that offhand, but I was like really overwhelmed with that feeling. It's like,
Mm,
what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I finally can articulate it,
yeah.
which is like, I just want to write and read.
Mm,
And it seems like a radical concept now because everyone's, oh, how do you want to impact the world? And I'm like, I don't know, man, but
I
I
want to
just
write and I
want
want
to
to
write
read.
and read. So maybe that can do something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it definitely can.
Yeah.
I often talk about. I put a tweet or two out there about, like, writing is the one vocation that you can do for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, a lot of research says writers peak at like 70 or 80.
That's
Like,
so funny. It
whereas,
it seems true though.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples out there. But
Yeah.
as opposed to like a mathematician or an engineer,
Yeah.
or something physical like an
Yeah.
athlete or even musicians, like, they tend to peak maybe late 20s, 30s,
Hmm.
maybe
The
40s
younger
for
they
something.
are, right?
Yeah. And writing is the one thing that seems to be accumulative. And
Mm.
that was part of, like, when I was, hit my 30s, having that, whatever, not midlife crisis, but that 30 crisis. I was like, I don't want to be an engineer when I'm 70. Like, what could I still be happy doing for the next 4 or 5 decades? The only
Yeah.
thing that comes to me is the same as your tweet. I could read and I
Yeah.
could write,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I'm glad that there's some authority behind you tweeting that and you saying that. This isn't just throwing something fun out there. This is like, no, I've had the life experience and I know this is
Yeah.
something that I can do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly. And like you, I think it's parallel, as you said, it's parallel stories. I've spent decades avoiding it
Hmm.
because of the perception that, oh, this isn't real work, this is just
Mm.
a hobby, like gardening or whatever. But it's not. It's actually the opposite. Like, this is the main thing, and all the other things are the side things. And I think in the end I surrendered to that, to be true to myself, and the pandemic was the big driver for that.
Yeah.
Because when everything stops, you're left with a question. You're faced with just you and yourself, and you think that if the world is going to end, because literally that's what we thought during those few
Yeah.
months where we
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on, right? And so you're left with a question. Okay, the world's ending, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And it
Beautiful.
was true to myself, and I was like, yeah, I just want to write, you know? And yeah, that was powerful. From then on, I was just like, all right, whatever. I'm gonna go back to writing. I'm gonna, not pretend to be interested in anything productive and anything else that's productive. But anything related to writing, I will do. So yeah, so that's when I started my editing business, Otherwordy,
Mm.
as an excuse to, to be around words, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful. Okay. Let's real quick plug, because
Mhm.
we buried the lead a little bit here. You have
Yeah.
a book that's coming
Yeah.
out this week. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So I am a published author in the Philippines, but this is my first sort of global foray into self-publishing. So
Nice.
at the New York Poetry Festival this weekend, July 29 and 30, I'll be launching my collection of poems,
Nice.
called New Grace, because that's the meaning of my name. Neva means new grace.
Beautiful.
So that's it's launching this weekend. So I'm excited for that. I'll be with other writers who
Yeah.
are.
Okay. We're back. We had some technical difficulties. The Wi-Fi connection gods are not loving us today, but we're gonna push through because this is such a good podcast, and I'm very excited about your book of poems, which is being released. And I would like for you to start again at the beginning.
Yeah.
I believe that you're releasing it this Saturday at the New York Poem Festival.
Yes, like the New York City Poetry Festival, which happens every year. And it's at this weekend, July 29 and 30, at Governor's Island, New York. And it's my poetry anthology. It's the first one that I am self-publishing here in the US. So I'm really excited about that. It's called New Grace, which is the my name. Nevacaris means new grace. And it's poems from 1998 until the present, which I haven't published.
Wow.
Yeah, because, well, back in the Philippines, I was published really early. You know, I was part of a literary group, and they liked my work, and so I got published early, and then I was a journalist. But somewhere along the way, it maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's just like real life getting to you. Like, I didn't have the confidence to continue publishing my work. I thought for a long time that no, it has to be like worthy of
Mm.
publishing.
Yeah.
And that's the number one sort of mistake that people think about when they think of getting published. It's not about being perfect or being a groundbreaking masterpiece before you can get published, right?
Yeah.
So here I am. Basically, I wanna walk my talk as I encourage
Beautiful.
other
Yeah. Lead
people.
lead lead by example.
Exactly. And I'm like,
Yeah.
here, as I call it, break the mystique of publishing, right?
Yeah.
Get your feet wet because, it's not as bad as you think, or it's not as difficult as you think. If you want to be a published author, write and publish because nobody else is going to do it for you. You need to crown yourself, quote unquote crown yourself. Because if you always, depend on external validation, then that's not going to be good for your writing, because good writing comes out of necessity, as a poet, Rainier Maria Rilke, said before.
Yeah.
um, it comes from necessity. And if in your soul you feel that you need to write, then you really don't need external validation.
Beautiful.
You do need an editor, though.
I know I need an editor.
You do need an editor just for a second set of eyes. Not to change what you write or how you write. That's definitely not what an editor does.
Mm,
But you need an ally. It's not easy writing, as you know, because you're an
yeah.
author yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That I love everything that you said so much. I know writing is you're definitely hinting at such a personal and at times lonely experience.
Yeah.
It's you and the page for hours and hours and hours, and you're like, oh my God, is this good? Is it not good? Is anyone even going to understand this? And it's one of the most personal journeys that we can go on as creatives, right? Sitting down and writing on the page. And I definitely believe you. I've never worked with an editor. I have friends that are authors that have worked with editors, and they all say like, yeah, a good editor doesn't make you change your message, but they make your message better. And that's definitely what I heard. And what you're saying is you need some sort of an ally if you're going all the way to the publishing, sharing it with the world, going through that process. And so, yeah, I love everything that you say. I would um, love to hear more about your work as a editor and working with people that have published. What's your experience on that front?
So the good thing and the bad thing, I guess, is that I have experience both in the traditional publishing side and the self-publishing, and currently I'm really getting into it, the social publishing side, which I wanted to, discuss with you too and see what you thought.
Mm,
Because what we see on the bestseller lists, on the bookshelves, on Barnes and Noble and all of that, those are, most of them, if not all of them, are traditionally published. And by that, I mean they're published by the big five publishers, HarperCollins, Random House, etc., and all of their many, many imprints.
mhm,
And all of those authors are great and everything, right? But and then everyone wants to have that dream to get the book deal and submit to have an agent, sell their books to one of the big companies and then get a book deal. But the reality is that is not the experience of 99% of authors who even get published by the big five. you
mhm,
know Most of those authors who get the book deals do not get those, six-figure deals, and proper marketing, etc. But all of these things are just sort of not talked about, and I wish they were. And I think that's the reason why I've been really trying to learn more about having a platform like social media, Twitter, and all of that. um and why I met you on Twitter, because I wanted to sort of give people like the real story behind traditional publishing, and
mhm,
how it is not, a lot of times it is not democratized. I want to say that's the simplest way I can put it.
Yeah,
Like
makes sense.
they get from the same circles all the time.
Hmm.
Like recently I went through the top 20 bestseller lists, and what are the odds that every one of those authors except for two came from Ivy League universities,
Yeah, it's a very small circle. This is the
right?
1% of the 1%. Yeah.
And then of those 20, about 5 or 6 went to the Iowa Writers Workshop, which is
Yeah.
like a prestigious creative writing workshop, right?
Yeah.
And then two of them in those top 20 lists came from a novel writing workshop that a prestigious agent ran.
Hmm.
So my point here is this. Um, you know, they keep getting from circles like the publishers and the agents. Most of them keep getting from the same small circles. And so they're not necessarily the very best writers. They're great writers, right?
Hmm.
But the chances of being discovered and being published mainstream or traditionally, if you do not belong to these circles, are not good.
Yeah.
But at the
And
same time, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I would like to get your opinion. Do you think for writing as a field and as a culture that this actually isn't serving the readers as much, that we have such a small, tight, elite circle of publishers that are, hitting the
Yeah,
top bestseller list?
that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
basically. So, and then the writers who are good in their own right, they feel like they're not good enough
Hmm.
because they weren't quote unquote chosen, right? But
Yeah.
that's not the case at all because there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of great writers out there who don't get published traditionally. And for a long time, that was the case. And people just assumed, oh, the others were just not good enough to get published.
Hmm.
But that's not true. So, this is why I am so happy that we are in an age where technology enables us to self publish and distribute easily. This
Yeah.
was not possible even 10 years ago,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But now it is. And there's not just self publishing, not vanity publishing, but you can actually, write in public, like go on Twitter and sort of, write as you're writing your book, get, people on board who are interested in it, build a platform, and then that becomes your distribution platform,
Yeah.
and one good example of this that we knew we were going to talk about him is like Dan Cole and his book, The Art of Focus, right? So
Absolutely.
he doesn't fit the mold of the usual author that the big publishers would actually give a book deal to,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
Not an Ivy League, not Harvard grad, right?
Hmm.
At least as far as I know.
I don't
Um,
think so.
yeah, he didn't join any prestigious creative writing workshops. He
Yeah.
honed his writing through Twitter, right?
Yeah.
And through his
Hmm.
newsletters. And he became a really good writer. And nobody told him how to write a book. He just did it. And when I came in the picture as an editor, he had already written most of his manuscript.
Hmm.
So, whether or not I came in the picture, he would have had that book. But I'd like to think that I helped a little bit in helping him develop that and giving him a picture of what the traditional publishing expectations are for the book. So
Hmm.
he had options. So I would say that's what a good editor really does or gives to a writer. An editor presents options,
Hmm.
and then the
Absolutely.
author then decides what is the best form or the best option for the book, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So speaking of Danko, like as you said, we knew we would bring him up. Um, I found him through YouTube of all things. I wasn't on Twitter, he kind of was what motivated him. Him and Dakota Robertson, who I joined his
Mhm.
cohort. Yeah, uh,
Yeah,
who was the mentee of him.
that's right.
Yeah. Dakota got him into writing online in the first place, and doing online business. Uh, I read Dan Coe's newsletter once a week. It's almost like Christmas or my birthday every week when
Yeah,
it comes out. I'm so excited to read it because you can see this sort of new evolution of this new genre of writers that have grown their following and done their craft online, or
yeah,
particularly on Twitter, because the ideas are so clear, concise. The fluff is cut out of it because they know what works and what doesn't. They're not trying to impress people with fancy language or whatever.
mhm.
They're trying to convey a point. And I respect writers. I love Robert Greene. I don't know if you're familiar with him. 48 Laws of
Yes.
Power. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then his mentee, his apprentice, Ryan Holiday, is another one of my favorites. I've read both of all of their books, some a few times, and they have similar philosophies of like, the idea of writing is to convey a message. Anything that doesn't serve that, especially nonfiction,
Yes.
anything that doesn't serve that is just you trying to impress people that you shouldn't even care about their opinion anyway, right?
Yeah.
Let's tell stories. Let's use analogies and metaphors and get the point across. And to me, Dan Coe is absolute master of that, which is
Yeah.
so impressive because he's only been doing this for a few years. I'm absolutely stoked for The Art of Focus, and I can't wait to devour that thing when it comes out.
It's a doozy. It's a really good book. And I've edited a lot of books. So I can really attest to, how how much this book would be influential. It's not about how to grow on Twitter, stuff
Mm,
like that. He
mhm,
dives into everything he's learned about the creator economy because he's
mm,
very bullish on that and for good reason. And approaches it from a philosophical point of view because he's very much into philosophy, and I know you are too. Um, so I wouldn't say that he writes, you know, in layman terms. Like that's not completely right. He has a personal style. So yes, it's about clarity, but conversely, it's also his priority, his style is that he knows he's talking to a particular audience.
mm,
So he's not seeking validation, but he knows he's talking to a particular set of people who might need his message.
yeah,
And so he is talking in a way that will reach them to be accessible,
yeah,
instead of preaching. So there's a huge difference, and that's a delicate balance. The one thing that he did to reach that level of writing maturity, I think, is his consistency. Right? He's
yeah,
known for, if there's one thing he's known for, is like, right, I'm gonna do the work, and just go for it, and it paid off, obviously.
yeah.
um and seven, I think he's been at it for 7 years, and that's a long time.
That
And
is,
I
yeah.
think,
Especially if you're
yeah,
consistent.
yeah, and people miss out on this. They think that, oh, you need talent, you need to be like immediately a genius or a talent. He didn't start out that way either. If you go back to, if you dig back long enough, he definitely didn't start out that way. So yeah, this book is going to be um a real it's one main example of what, main publishers or the big publishers will not usually publish,
Mm,
but you'll miss out on the value if it
yeah,
never got published. Imagine not having this published in the world, and a lot of people missing out on this message.
yeah.
So
What a
I'm
shame.
yeah, so I'm glad that he decided to self-publish. And I'm going to tell this story because just to get this point across.
Please.
Um, so I believed in this book, so I referred it to a traditional publisher, right?
Hmm.
And not even 48 hours, not even 24 hours later, he got a book offer. He got a book deal right away.
Wow.
By virtue, well, number one, yes, the book is good, but I think by virtue of his really big platform.
Mm.
And but then if you're going for a big publisher, you're gonna wait 1 or 2 years before the book comes out because they
Yeah.
have a lineup already set, right? You
Hmm.
really won't have much control over like the book cover or the look or whatever, right? And the
Yeah.
marketing. And so Dan weighed all of that, and he even consulted like a literary lawyer, and the lawyer said, "Well, you can, market this to other publishers and shop for the best price, the best deal." But he was not interested in that. He just said like, "Well, I want to publish this on my own terms.
Yeah.
And if that means not having this book deal, then so be it." Like he didn't, he didn't want to do the dance for the publishers and everything.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
didn't need them
Hmm.
because he had a distribution network of his own already. And anyway, he didn't do it for the money. He's doing it to really reach more people who need it. And I think that's a very good example of what a platform can do for you as an author. And
Yeah.
so it was like a light bulb moment for me as well. It's like, whoa, this is social publishing. This is a real thing. Like you don't need the publisher's distribution network anymore because you have this platform. And so yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I like talking about that because it's just so sort of, revolutionary.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we really are living in unprecedented times that we can talk directly to our audience, and we can reach them directly. And the speed, like you said, waiting a year and a half to 2 years for going through the traditional publishing route. One of my really good friends, Keith Thompson, who's
Yeah.
a multiple published author, author of Angels and Aliens. He has a new book coming out, and he hustled for years and had deadlines and barely got his manuscript in, the day before it was due.
Mhm.
This was back in January of this year, and
Yeah.
he didn't hear a thing from anybody for 6 months on it. He didn't
When
know
he
if anyone.
submitted it,
Yes,
that's
and this is
typical.
yes, and this is someone who's multiply published, well respected, well reviewed all
I
over the
know.
world for decades, and I was like, I couldn't imagine, like, your entire world is this book for a year straight, all the research, all the work of putting the words down on the page, all your own particular editing and revising, and you don't hear a thing for 6 months. And they just told him, I think, a week ago, yeah, it'll be coming out next summer, maybe. You know,
Whoa.
yeah,
No, really?
yes,
And then it's tied to the publisher, right? So he can't do
exactly.
anything about it. He signed the
Yeah,
contract.
they own it.
There's
Yeah,
so many horror stories like that. And they can decide not to publish it and you can't publish it anywhere else.
I know. Yeah.
That's the
So
dark side of traditional publishing.
so yeah, I think the freedom that goes along with self-publishing alone, the freedom and the speed,
Yeah,
and the ability to connect directly with your audience is huge. There's obviously trade-offs on both sides,
of
but
course.
we are living in a revolutionary time, a new era
Hmm.
where we can speak, directly and distribute directly to our audience, which is so cool. I'm so glad that Dan has made that choice, that he's leading that way. Maybe he could have made a lot more money or got a much,
He definitely could have.
more money in his pocket quicker, but he's
Yeah.
choosing what serves his art and his writing and his audience the best, which I think that's really admirable.
Yeah, well, also he would have been at a disadvantage because a bulk of the royalties are going to the publishers and not
Hmm.
him,
Yeah.
So he's like, well, this is not a good deal at all. So I told him that too, like, do you think this is a good deal? And I'm like, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, you have millions of of audience. You have a big audience, and you're just doing them a favor and not the other way around.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it really wasn't a good deal for him. It was just sort of, I wanted to see, or I wanted to give him the experience of like, look, this is definitely a book that could be published by the big five,
Mm.
because you have a huge author platform, all because of the book, yes, but also because this is unprecedented. Like, they don't have that big of a platform either.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. He has a bigger platform than them, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, like, my point is, I think authors might, and it's not easy, because I know, when Dan began, he was all in on the digital, social media part of it. But I know most authors aren't. It's
Hmm.
it's difficult, and
Yeah.
I was
I
one of them,
resisted it for a long time. Yeah, as you did.
right?
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
But we need to kind of view it in a different way, that nobody else is going to be the biggest advocate for our work and ourselves but us.
Yeah.
And technology is giving us an opportunity to do it through social platforms.
Yeah.
And we don't need to reinvent the wheel, because that was the hardest thing for me. I'm like, what the hell do I write? What do I want to write the book. I don't want to write on Twitter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But examples like Dan, Dakota, and all of Joey Justice, like,
Hmm.
they sort of lead the way in, you don't need to write from scratch. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. They've already, they've already led the way. So, and it's not, you're not alone, basically.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so even though it's not a comfort zone, our comfort zone,
Yeah.
um, building a platform digitally will serves us best.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I want to ask you personally. I've found since I started writing tweets 3 weeks ago, I think about writing different. And when I sit down to work on my newsletter, which are normally around 1,000 words or so, um, uh, it's changing the way that I write that. And I do have a plan to eventually publish a book. It's sort of scattered chapters, and it's all sort of many different puzzle pieces that aren't fitting together yet. But every now and then I get inspired to go in and work on one of those chapters. And over these last 3 weeks, I see that it's changed the way that I'm writing there too. Something about the 280 characters of having to get a point across. I go, man, okay, I think I need 1,000 words to say this, but what if I had to say it in a tweet? And just doing that exercise has helped me to get a lot more clear, concise, direct to the point on my long form writing as well. So I was wondering if you've had any sort of a similar experience as you started on Twitter.
I like how you said that, and quite I didn't put it quite that way, when I was reflecting on um, consistently writing on Twitter. But you're completely right, because I'm comfortable with long form, as are you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so, doing short form, from distilling that to short form, was really challenging. But if we think about it that way, like as an exercise, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it doesn't need to be extra work. It's actually not extra work. It's sort of a mental exercise that benefits our writing in the long run. And
Yeah.
you're right, the danger is, so writing in short form is actually good for our long form writing, because it teaches us to distill to the real essence. It's almost like that minimalist philosophy, that only the essentials, right?
Mhm.
Where it gets hairy is if the only things you read are short form.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Yes, I think maybe a good tweet coming to me. Read books, but practice in tweets or something like that. Because yeah, only
Exactly.
only I've noticed only reading tweets, and especially what the algorithm pushes out to me. I'm like, this is not my favorite form of consuming reading
Exactly.
at all. It is. It feels a
Exactly.
little bit like work, but Dakota gives us an assignment of commenting 30 times a day, and I'm like, it's my least favorite part of Twitter so far. I'm learning. I'm getting better at it. That's why I comment on your stuff a lot because your stuff's really good. But but yeah, that's not my favorite thing. I have to. It's like I have to like cleanse my mind and soul and pick up a paper book,
Yeah.
a couple times
Yes.
a day and read just to. I think that those inputs are a whole hell of a lot better.
Definitely, because when you keep reading like short form or posts online, it's like reading, or it's like taking shots of espresso, because they are distilled, right?
Yes,
Some are
yes.
better than others, but
Hmm.
it's basically that. And if you keep drinking espresso, that's not going to be good for you in the long run. You
Yes.
need to like pace yourself, and you need to have that, sort of variety, so that your mind can really reflect and everything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's tough, like 30 30 engagement. I think that exercise is just law of averages, right? Because
Yeah.
he's not saying that you're going to engage deeply with 30 people, but you're going to kind of stretch out of your comfort zone, which you
Yeah.
are,
Hmm.
to understand other people's stories. And I think that's really important, because if we just keep curating what we read to what we know, that's not gonna teach us something new.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
like that's why I also read tweets or newsletters from like marketers or like
Mhm.
salespeople, even though that's not my comfort zone at all. But it's interesting after a while. I get to know their stories and how, and for them that is a way of life. And it's interesting. It's not gonna be my life, but getting that perspective is, super useful to me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's funny, actually. I just this thought just came to me as you were talking about commenting on people's posts. I follow some of my favorite authors: Robert Greene, Ryan Holiday,
Yeah.
James Clear, author of Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
And when they put out these little quotes, I read the quote, but I have the context of reading,
Oh,
in
yeah.
all of their work, right? So
That's right.
it's so I feel so confident in being able to say something, of value to one of their quotes because I have, you know, hundreds of hours of reading,
Yep.
backing up every comment that I put out there, and I get, a shitload of likes normally on anything that I
Yeah.
comment on their stuff, and then I'll look at other comments and I see like, you guys have not read a single page of their
Yeah.
work, like you're missing the context.
That's right. That's just their assignment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. So I actually didn't even make that connection until you were sharing that. But yeah, I think getting to your other point, it is very useful to stretch out of your comfort zone and see, those like myself too, sales and marketing and even copywriting, which is like
Yeah.
it's writing, but it's like, oh my God, I feel like a baby deer that can't stand, my legs are
Yeah.
shaky whenever I read or try to do any sort of copywriting. But I think that it will serve, in the long
Yeah.
run, what my goals are and all that, and it's good to stretch out, and it's cool. You can always come back to your jam, and if your jam is long form writing, poetry, reading poetry and long form novels and
Yeah.
nonfiction, all that, you can always come back to that. That can kind of be like your dessert, right?
Yeah.
But but sometimes, yeah, getting out of your comfort zone and putting in the work and something like that is it's only going to make you a better um, writer, personal brand, all the things that we're trying to build here online too. So
Yeah,
I really
you
appreciate that.
mentioned you mentioned that the personal brand, and it sounds icky at
I
first
know it's a little
when you
cringy, but
right?
I'm
But
learning to
it's
love it.
I know. No, I mean, I wish there was another term for that, because obviously personal brand is so much more.
Hmm.
But that's what our times call for.
Yeah,
Certain different eras have different, things that people are called for. And in our era, where it's like digital and technology, is a big part of our lives, personal branding is the norm now.
Yeah.
And not because like we want to be lemmings and follow the crowd. It's not that. It's the opposite actually. Like if, as I said before, nobody can really advocate as well, um advocate for us but us.
Yeah.
So the way we can really, other than writing, other than our art, the way you really can reach other people, connect to other people, is through personal branding, like being clear about what you stand for or your values.
Yeah.
um and it doesn't mean that the only people connecting to you are exactly the same people, but you sort of have a beacon about what you want to put out there, and um those who it resonates with will respond in kind, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, they don't have to buy the whole product. They just
Yep.
have to get some value out of it, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard the uh, Neville quote, "Escape competition through authenticity." One of my favorite musicians, Akira the Don, just did a remix of Naval saying that, "Escape
Really?
competition through It's so good. Do you know Akira the Don?
I haven't, no, I haven't
I'm gonna send you
heard
some
of
stuff
them,
because
but
it's
please
my
send me.
jam.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But you're the
it's my
second person to mention that.
to mention him, Akira the Don.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So he one of my favorite art forms. He takes spoken word and puts music under it, beats and stuff like
Oh
that.
my god.
And
It
he
sounds
just
like something I'd be into.
oh, it's my favorite. I listen to it. I'm a little obsessed like every morning. And
Wow.
he's so cool too. Like his whole thing is all he calls it the meaning wave. He's all about
Mm.
like finding meaning and like riding the wave of meaning in life and like, just like really cool inspirational stuff. But he just dropped a album last week of Naval, all Naval Ravikant
Wow.
talks, and it's so good. I'm gonna send it to you just
Yeah,
to make sure
please.
you don't miss it. But yeah, the first song is "Escape Competition Through Authenticity," and I think that's been a good North Star for me starting out. The idea of the personal brand, which was very
Yeah.
hard and cringy for me at first, was like just be authentic, like be
Yeah.
yourself, and that's gonna make you stand out from the crowd. Don't do or say what you think people are gonna like or gonna get you followers and this and that.
Yeah.
Like there, Dan Code talks about this, the niche of one, right? You are the niche.
Yep.
And like if you're true to yourself, if you like, and which is an art form, it's easier said than done, right? You have to put in the work and really understand yourself, understand your message and how to deliver your unique message. But if you can do that, the idea of a personal brand isn't quite as hard to not quite as cringy. It's just like, no, this is people are going to follow you that authentically enjoy the work you're doing and the message that you're putting out there. So,
That's
yes,
right.
I
And
love
I
everything that
think,
you said.
yeah, and I love that too, Nick, because, personal branding, we equate it to digital marketing,
Mm,
but that's only because that's what we keep seeing on platforms. However, it doesn't have to be that way, because personal branding could be anything you want it to be.
yeah,
What's authentic to you, and it doesn't have to be about digital marketing. It can be about the book you're writing. It
yeah,
could be a personal brand about, okay, what are the things that I want to say, to leave to my two daughters.
yeah.
What do I
Beautiful.
want to endure? That's personal branding. And we need more. I think it's a, what do you call that, it's a paradox. The more we lean into personal branding, the more representation of, you know of creative people there will be, and then other
Yeah,
people will see, oh, it's not just about digital marketing, it's
yeah.
not just about SEO.
And we can kind of allow other people to be more authentic themselves. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is someone that's doing their thing, speaking their truth, and it's working for them. Maybe I could
Yeah.
do that too, right? Instead of
Yeah.
obsessing over SEO, like you said, and
Yeah.
everything else.
Exactly. And you don't have to be a guru, right? You don't
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to be
no,
an expert. And I think, we keep talking about him, but his ears must be burning. But this is, I think, one of the reasons why Danko really resonates with people, because he knows what he doesn't know, right? He doesn't
Exactly.
claim to be, oh, this is what I think, and this is what you should think too. He's very careful to contextualize it by saying, it took me years to learn this. He'll be very upfront
Honest.
about that.
Hmm.
You're not gonna get it right away because I didn't. Like nobody does really. And then he's saying this thing, but he knows he's not the expert, and he won't position it that way. He'll just make you think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not about being a guru. I think the age of the guru has not served us at
I
all,
agree. Yeah.
because we're human beings.
Yeah.
We're imperfect. And if you want to position yourself that way, then you're going to position yourself for a downfall, because you're not infallible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, uh, being true, being imperfect is actually the best move as an artist, as a personal brand, as a writer, as a creator. The best move is to be
Yeah.
perfectly imperfect, express yourself, be true, be honest, be upfront. And we have a lot of great examples of that, online and in the past couple of years, which is really cool.
For real. Well, I was curious what you thought about. I know this is like such a, um cliche topic maybe, but I wondered if you've tried out using AI in writing.
It's so funny you said that. I have not. I'm
Yeah.
resisting it a lot.
Yeah.
You mentioned Joey Justice earlier.
Yeah.
He's a part of my cohort that I'm doing, Growth Ghost with Dakota Robertson,
Yeah.
and he just did an absolute masterclass on, because he's a ghostwriter, so he has to write for other people that he doesn't necessarily have expertise in their
Yep.
field, right?
Yes.
Finance or crypto or health or whatever. And he gave an example of using AI prompts, and just, it was amazing. It was like he wrote a thread in like 15 minutes on a
Yeah.
subject he didn't even know anything about, and it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was sitting there like, okay, you gotta face this dragon, you gotta cross this bridge, you gotta, and I still have not even looked into or signed up for a AI account yet. But
Yeah.
it's if I do go the ghostwriting route, and probably even if I don't, I should at least experiment with it. But yeah, to be honest, I'm very, very resistant to it. I'm like a big team human,
Yeah.
humanist kind of person. How about you? What are your opinions on AI?
I think, AI could serve us in, when we write about things that are not necessarily worth the brain power. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like
mhm.
if we're captioning a
Totally.
photograph, like why
Yeah.
would I don't need a masterpiece to write a masterpiece to caption a photograph.
Yes.
Or even like it's sometimes it's so hard to plan socials, but you
Mhm.
know that it'll serve you. And so if you can just generate from your own previous content, of course. I don't believe in um blank prompts.
Yeah.
I usually prompt the AI and I don't use it often at all. I've only used it twice, I think. But but I've fed it my own previous content and asked it to generate from there, because I always want to be careful that I'm sure the AI scrapes from copyrighted content.
Mhm.
That's my main
Here.
resistance to it. I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. Like I want to respect the writers whose work are online, and then AI just grabs it, and it's I don't want to do that. So I always want to generate from the things that I've already written. um and yes, sometimes if it's a really busy week and I need to generate like an Instagram post or whatever, I'll generate from there, and then I still need to edit it. So that's the thing. It's not gonna be like as you saw Joey probably do.
Yeah, yeah. It
It's
wasn't
not
one and done.
instant.
It wasn't cut and
Yeah.
paste. Yeah.
Yeah, you still need to write it, you still need to edit it, but maybe it helps just to have something started so that it's not a blank page, you
Yeah.
know? But
Yeah.
I found that I never really needed it so much.
Mm.
Yeah, I just hope that I just hope that there are like safeguards in place so that, copyright infringement doesn't
Yeah, that's a great
happen.
point. I wonder if there's any companies that are looking into doing AI where everything is quoted, like really putting in above and beyond and
Yeah, like
prioritizing that. If you
citing, yeah, at
Yes.
least citing it, right?
Exactly. I'm interested because I haven't had the experience yet. What the first time that you gave AI your writing
Uh-huh.
and it produce something in your own voice. Was it trippy to be like, whoa, that kind of sounds like me?
It actually didn't sound like me. That's the funny because yeah, I think because I prompted it to like, oh, distill this in like 400 words, to be an
Mm,
Instagram post, for example,
hmm
because that's the
hmm
limit. And then
Yeah,
it did it, and I'm like, I wouldn't write it that way at all. I still needed to edit it, you know.
that's refreshing. I'm actually glad to hear that because what I'm terrified of is I go, hey, write this in the voice of Nick Bibeau, and it produces something better than I can. I might be like, okay, I might have to give up on writing.
I've always wondered about that because some people, they give examples and it's really good, but I've never really had that experience. So I don't
I'm
know.
actually glad to hear that.
Yeah. Actually, if you follow the Substack of Martha Nichols,
I've
she
heard that name. I'm gonna check her out.
yeah,
Okay.
she's our publisher. She's our publisher for Talking
Hmm.
Writing. She founded
Okay. Oh,
like,
awesome.
you know, but she what do you call this? Does experiments with chat GPT. Like she'll give prompts and then she'll post on the newsletter, the result, and it's funny. The results are hilarious. So you should check out. I'll send you the link to
Please do. Yeah, yeah.
the Substack
That
of
sounds
Martha
great.
Nichols. I
Right
think,
on.
one of the prompts she gave was about like, okay, write about I think the rewrite the creation story or something like that
Oh my God.
without using certain words. And it was just,
Uh-huh.
oh, it was hilarious.
I bet. I
Yeah,
bet.
I'll send you the link.
Please do. Yes. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. I have a call to be on here in a few minutes.
No
I,
worries.
I feel like we barely scratched the surface. We're gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to have you on here again if you're willing to come back on because we got to get into your story. I often do this when I first meet people over the podcast. We
Yeah.
just sort of jam and have fun, and then on the second go around, I sort of get into their story.
Yeah, who
Because I
wants the
would love.
story? I'm just kidding. Yeah, no,
I do, we do.
yeah.
So.
Well, next time maybe we can do something like, um do live AI generated
Oh, there we
writing,
go.
something like that, and then like roast it. I don't know.
There you go. That'd be very fun,
Yeah.
and hopefully have a better connection next time so we can
I
see each other.
know.
But this was good, and from here on out, the voice connection was really good. So
Yeah.
we'll work with it. I would like to close. So just ideas been coming to me, in the spirit of properly citating your findings. I love the question you asked at the beginning for your podcast. So can I steal slash borrow
Yes.
that question and pose it on you to see what your answer is?
About the creative lifer.
Yeah. So can you quote it for me one more time? The question you ask.
Um Basically like, what does creative lifer or life mean to you, and what basically the main question there is, what is the use of art, right? Why
I
have
love
you
it.
decided to be a creative lifer? So to
So to
answer that
quote
question,
Neva,
yeah.
quote, what does a creative life mean and what does it mean to be a creative for you?
So what it means to me is really tied to the question of why is art useful? And for me, I'm a creative lifer because writing and creating art makes meaning in
Mm,
our lives. So I say makes meaning and not gives meaning because we create it. It's up to us. Our life is, if we just, think about life, it's very random. I know that there are religious people and everything, but that just doesn't resonate with me. I know that there's a beginning and an end to everything, and our lives are so short, you know? It's gonna
Yeah.
end. It is gonna have an ending. But in the meantime, what do we do in the middle of that? And I think the reason why art did not die off, even during the Industrial Revolution, even during the technology era, even with AI, writing and art didn't die off because we need meaning in our lives. And it's not, meaning isn't given to us. We make it,
Yes.
we create
Yes.
it. And if we don't acknowledge that, or if I don't acknowledge that, then I don't know literally how I would survive or thrive. You know,
Mm. Yeah.
I love getting up in the morning, or I get up in the morning because I know that whatever else happens in the world that I can't control, at least for myself, I can make meaning.
100%.
And that's why I am a creative, and I'm living a creative life, and that's why I believe art and writing is needed more than ever.
I could not agree more. What a beautiful answer. What a beautiful way to end this. Um, and I'll have you back on sometime soon, and
Yeah, this was great.
I'll tell some more
And
stories.
yeah, thank you for being open to this and for bringing on people, not just the same kinds of people, but different kinds of people on. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely. And for everyone that listened to the end, plug all your handles so they can come find you on Twitter and Instagram and Threads,
Oh,
and where they
yeah.
can find your book. Or
Yeah.
if anyone needs you as an editor, please
Oh,
plug your
yeah.
website. Yes.
Yeah, so I am Otherwordy Edits on Twitter and just Otherwordy everywhere else on Instagram and Threads. And if you're interested in seeing how we can work together, you can always go to my website, otherwordy.com, and let's talk. There's a link there for us to connect. So, yeah,
Awesome. And I
thank
want to
you.
read your poem anthology. Can I find it on your website? Where can I get this?
It's going to be online by July 29, by the weekend.
Okay.
That's
All
the
right.
official release, but I am going to, plug it on the socials. So thank you so much for, helping me promote it.
Of course. My pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and dropping all that beautiful wisdom and insight.
I'm glad to talk this
Okay.
morning.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Peace. Gonna end the recording.
Bye.
Oh. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this conversation, please hit the like button. If you want to watch more podcasts like this in the future, subscribe and hit the notification to be notified when they come up. If you want to keep up with me, I am on Twitter now every day at write with a W already. Link to that will be in the description. If you want to check out my writing, I publish a newsletter every Friday through Substack. Link to that will also be in the description. I love you guys, and let's keep doing this together. Peace.